He couldn't see the world, but she saw him like no one else ever had. And when her hands touched his eyes, neither of them could explain what happened next. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now back to the story. What do you think it feels like to see sunlight? Elias asked the question quietly, his voice floating like dust in the golden silence of his room. He was 11, sitting cross-legged on the window seat of the family's 3-story estate in Charleston. His fingers played absent-mindedly with the edges of a Braille book, one he had memorized long ago. He didn't wait for an answer. No one ever answered his questions. Downstairs, the sound of polished shoes clicked on imported marble. His father, Charles Wyndham III, a man of legacy and bottom lines, was likely instructing staff in clipped tones. Elias had learned long ago to read moods by the pace of footfalls. His father's were always fast, impatient, unwelcoming. His mother, she mostly cried behind locked doors, always blaming herself when she thought no one was listening. But Elias had ears like radar and a heart that was tired of apologies that never turned into love. The mansion was a fortress of silence. Meanwhile, across the city, Nia stood at the bus stop, hands tucked into the faded denim jacket passed down from her mother. Her fingers were raw from scrubbing bathrooms the day before, but her eyes were bright, always bright, even when the world gave her every reason not to be. She wasn't supposed to be anyone important, just a new housemaid hired by the Wyndhams after the last one quit suddenly. Too much tension, the woman had whispered as she clocked out. That house got ghosts, girl. But Nia had learned not to run from places with ghosts. She carried her own. And besides, $300 a week, room and board. She couldn't say no. She stepped onto the bus and looked out at the early morning light pouring through cracked windows. The city passed by in blurred mosaics of brick, shadow and hope. "Lord, just let me make it through this day with peace," she whispered. What she didn't know was, peace wasn't what she was about to find. Back at the mansion, Elias turned his head as he heard soft footsteps outside his door. Not hard like his father's, not hushed like his mother's. These were light, curious, with the rhythm of someone who hummed while they worked. The door creaked open slightly. Then a voice, warm, unsure, carrying the hush of someone who knew how to step softly through other people's pain. "Mr. Elias? I'm Nia. I'll be taking care of your room from now on. Mind if I come in?" He didn't answer, but he didn't say no either. The first time she touched him, it wasn't on purpose. She was reaching for the windowsill to dust, and her fingers grazed his wrist, soft featherlight. A jolt passed between them. Not electricity, but something more human, something like being noticed. Elias flinched, not from fear, just surprise. Few people touched him. Even fewer did so gently. "Sorry, baby," Nia murmured instinctively, stepping back. "Didn't mean to startle you." He didn't reply. He just tilted his head, listening. "You don't call me Mr. Elias like the others," he said after a pause. "You a boy, not a boss," she chuckled softly, dusting again. "Ain't nothing wrong with just being a boy sometimes." That made him pause. It was the first time someone had said that to him without pity. She returned the next day and the next, always humming under her breath, gospel, old soul, or sometimes just made-up tunes that rose and fell like wind through trees. One afternoon, while cleaning the bookshelves, she noticed him sitting cross-legged on the floor with a blank canvas in front of him. Dozens of them lined the corner of his room, blank, untouched. "You like to paint?" she asked. "No," he replied flatly. "Then why all the empty canvases?" A pause. "Because I want to, but it feels stupid." She walked over and sat beside him, slow, gentle, like she didn't want to scare a deer. "Don't let the world tell you what your hands ain't allowed to feel," she said softly. "You may not see color, but maybe your soul does." That sentence hung in the air like something sacred. He turned his face toward her, unblinking. "Why do you talk like that?" "Like what?" "Like you mean it." The following week, he caught a fever, burning hot, sweat-soaked, trembling. No one else came. His parents were in Geneva for a fundraiser. It was Naya who sat by his bedside all night, laying cold cloths on his forehead, whispering lullabies from her childhood, humming him into dreams. By morning his fever had broken, but something else had cracked open too. "Miss Naya," he whispered as she changed his pillow, "can I ask you something? Anything, sugar. Do you think God forgot about me?" She froze, cloth mid-air. "No, baby. I think God's just waiting for the right moment to show you something you wasn't ready to see." She cupped his cheek, and then without thinking, without ceremony, she rubbed her thumb gently over his closed eyelids, and he gasped. Not from pain, but from light. Light, light. It flickered like a dying candle at first, then burst into 1,000 rays of golden white behind his lids. He sat upright, shaking. "Miss Naya, something's happening." "What you mean?" she whispered, gripping his hand. I see something. I see light." His voice cracked on the word like it didn't know how to carry the weight. She stared at him, her own breath hitching. He reached out, not toward her voice but toward her silhouette. He saw her. Elias didn't tell anyone. Not the doctors, not the staff, not even his mother, who had returned with stories of Swiss spas and quiet avoidance. For 3 days, he kept the secret like it was something fragile, too sacred to be believed. Light still came in flickers, like candlelight beneath water. Faint silhouettes, glows, shapes, but it was real, and only Nia knew. That scared him more than the miracle itself. "What if it goes away?" he whispered to her one night. "Then we thank God we saw it at all," she answered. "But what if no one believes me? What if they say I'm making it up?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed his hand over her heart. "You feel that? Yeah, then believe that too. Not everything real got to come with proof." But proof was what the world demanded. The next morning, Elias tried to describe what he saw in whispers. The colors were still guesses. He called gold warm and green whispering. But the outlines of Nia's figure, the way the sunlight bled through the curtains, he knew them now. He painted them with trembling hands. She watched him quietly from across the room. But fear began to creep in, because as Elias became brighter, she began to dim. Word got around. A servant overheard them talking. 2 days later, Mr. Wyndham summoned Nia to the study. The air was thick with cigar smoke and warning. "You've been telling my son he can see?" he asked without turning around. "No, sir. He told me. He's blind, Miss Green. Maybe not anymore." He finally faced her. His eyes were not angry but cold, businesslike. "I don't know what kind of ideas you're planting in his head, but I won't have false hope disturbing his routine." "With respect, sir," she said, heart-pounding. "Maybe it's not hope that's disturbing him. Maybe it's the lack of it." There was a long pause. Then, with finality, "Keep to your duties, Miss Green, and leave my son's imagination alone." She returned to Elias's room that evening, quieter than usual. He felt it immediately. "They said something to you, didn't they?" he asked. She hesitated, then said the cruelest thing she ever would. "Maybe it's all in your head, baby." He froze. "What? Maybe you just want to see so bad you dream in it." He turned his face away. "Get out." "Elias, you said it was real," he whispered, voice breaking. "You said it." She stood still, then turned and walked out. The door clicked shut like a tomb, and for the first time in days, darkness was all he knew. A storm rolled in that weekend, heavy and unapologetic. Rain hammered the estate's towering windows. The wind howled like it carried old stories in its lungs. The power flickered by mid-afternoon, and by dusk, the whole mansion was swallowed in silence and candlelight. The staff had all left early, except for one, Nia. The roads had flooded too fast. Her bus never came. "You'll have to stay the night," Mrs. Wyndham told her curtly, not meeting her eyes. "There's a cot in the laundry room." But Elias had already heard the rain. He had already heard her voice. He sat at the top of the stairs when she walked in, soaking wet, arms wrapped around herself. "You shouldn't be sitting there," she said, not looking at him. "And you shouldn't lie to me," he replied quietly. She flinched. "Why'd you say it wasn't real?" She walked past him, heading toward the back, but he stood and followed. His steps were careful. He still couldn't see clearly, just outlines. But he followed the shadow of her presence. "You told me to believe in it. Then you took it back. Why?" Nia turned, soaked curls clinging to her forehead, eyes tired. Because I was scared, Elias. Scared of what they'd do if they found out. Scared of what they'd do to you. They already think I'm broken. You're not, she said fiercely. You never were. A long silence passed between them. Just the storm. Just breath. Stay in here tonight, he said suddenly, motioning toward his room. She blinked. What? There's no heat in the laundry room. Just stay in here. I'll sleep on the floor. I ain't. Please. His voice cracked. He wasn't asking as a rich boy. He was asking as someone afraid of being left in the dark again. She nodded once. Okay, but I'm taking the floor. They laid out a blanket, lit a few candles and sat facing each other, knees tucked in, hearts slowly opening. The storm outside raged on, but inside that room, something quiet began to settle. Elias leaned back against the window seat, gazing into the flickering amber glow. When you rubbed my eyes, did you feel anything? Yeah, she said, almost too softly to hear. I felt like maybe I wasn't invisible anymore. He turned toward her shadow. You never were. The storm had passed by morning, but the house still whispered with shadows. Nia stood by the window, watching raindrops slide down the glass. Elias sat on the bed, tracing the rim of a glass candle holder. The night had changed something between them, undeniably, but neither of them said it. Do you think people are born broken? He asked suddenly. She turned. No, but I think life's got claws. He nodded slowly, then reached beneath the bed and pulled out a small wooden box. I want to show you something. He placed it in her hands, fingers trembling. Inside were sketches, crude, messy, but raw. Not drawn by a boy who could see, drawn by one who felt things deeper than the surface. Images of hands, silhouettes of trees, a swirl that looked like a mother's face fading into clouds. I used to draw what I dreamed, he said, not what I saw, what I imagined seeing. Nia flipped through them slowly, her eyes growing glassy. Then she stopped on one. It was a woman holding a baby, her skin dark, her smile tired but kind. That's you, he said. I drew that after the first time you sang to me. Her breath caught. She sat down beside him. You ever wonder why I took this job? She asked quietly. Because you needed the money? No, because this house used to belong to my grandmother. He turned to her, stunned. What? My Nana cleaned this house for 30 years, raised 3 boys in a 2-room house off Broad Street. She used to point to this place and say, one day, someone in this family's gonna walk through that front door not as help, but as healer. Her voice broke, but I never believed her, not until you. Elias was silent. Then he reached out and touched her hand. You did heal something, he whispered. Not just my eyes. Tears slipped down her cheeks. And you made me visible. In the quiet, the distance between them collapsed. Not romantically, not physically, but spiritually, as if 2 lost souls had finally been seen by someone who understood the weight they carried. For the first time in his life, Elias woke up not dreading the day. Not because his vision was fully back. It wasn't. Shapes still swam like shadows in the fog. But something else was clearer now. The sound of her laughter in the kitchen. The scent of cinnamon toast she made, just because. The way her voice hummed through the walls like a song his soul remembered. You ever been to the ocean? He asked one afternoon. They were sitting outside for the first time, on the stone garden bench his mother always said was decorative only. I used to go with my Nana. Nia smiled. We'd take the bus on Sunday mornings, sit on the sand in our church clothes like it was a throne. What's it like? The ocean, he nodded. It's big, loud, smells like salt and dreams, but when you close your eyes, she said, leaning closer, it don't matter what you see, you feel it in your chest, like God breathing. Elias was quiet for a long time, then he whispered, can you take me there one day? She looked at him. You want to go with me? I want to go with you, he said, not anyone else. The next few weeks passed like magic. He started painting again, not what he saw, but what he felt from her stories. He painted the ocean, the bench, the woman on the bus with a weary smile and hope in her pocket, and he painted her, always her hands, her joy, her presence, and Nia. She started writing poetry again, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager. She filled an old notebook with verses about boys who saw through the dark, and houses with ghosts that learned how to weep and be washed clean. One night after dinner, they sat beside the fireplace, wrapped in an old quilt. "I think I used to hate this place," Elias confessed, staring into the flame. "It felt like a prison, and now it feels like maybe I was just waiting for someone to come find me." She smiled. "And what if I told you I wasn't sent here to clean your room, but to clean out the lies you believed about yourself? Then I'd say, thank you for saving my life." Silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was safe. She reached for his hand. He didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't need eyes to shine. It was supposed to be a celebration. Elias had finished a painting, his boldest yet. A swirling sunrise over an ocean he'd never seen, with a silhouette on the shore, a woman, arms wide, head tilted toward the sky. It was titled Home. He wanted Nia to be the first to see it, but someone else saw it first. His mother. She stood in the doorway of his room, holding the canvas like it was dripping acid. "Where did this come from?" "I painted it," Elias said proudly, eyes searching her blurred outline. "Don't lie, Elias. You're blind." "I'm not." He hesitated. "Not anymore. Not fully. What are you talking about?" He pointed toward the hallway. "Nia. She touched my eyes. That night I had the fever. After that, something changed." The silence that followed was not shock. It was fear and judgment. By the time Nia walked in, Mrs. Wyndham had already summoned Mr. Wyndham and 2 uniformed security staff. "You manipulated my son," Charles Wyndham snapped. "You filled his head with fairy tales and false hope." "She didn't." Elias tried to interject. "He's painting, Charles," Mrs. Wyndham cried. "He's saying he can see. He thinks she healed him." Elias gripped Nia's hand. "Tell them it's real," he begged, but her eyes were full of the same fear she'd carried all her life. Fear of not being believed, of being punished for stepping beyond her place. And worst of all, fear of hurting him. "Nia," Elias said, his voice trembling, "please." But she looked at Mr. Wyndham, then back at Elias, and then she lied. "Your boy's confused," she said. "I never claimed nothing like that." Elias pulled back like he'd been slapped. "Why would you say that?" "Because it's true," she said flatly, folding her hands in front of her apron. "He just dreaming too hard, that's all." Mr. Wyndham turned to the guards. "Escort her off the property." "No," Elias shouted, reaching out for her. She didn't resist. She didn't scream. She just looked at him one last time, eyes full of pain and apology, and let them take her away. That night, Elias painted nothing. He sat by the window, face pressed against the glass, the storm long gone, but the ache just beginning, and the word home had never felt further away. Days passed. The house fell silent again, like it had before she came. Only this time, Elias couldn't bear the quiet, not after he'd known the sound of her laugh in the hallways, the way her steps always came with warmth, the scent of cocoa butter and courage that lingered in the corners she used to clean. He stopped eating, stopped painting, stopped speaking even. His father called it a phase, his mother called it mourning, but Elias knew the word, loss, real loss, the kind that didn't come with funerals, but felt like dying anyway. One night, he sat on the floor in the art room, surrounded by blank canvases. A single painting lay at his feet, Home. It was the only one he'd saved from the purge his father had ordered. His fingers traced the lines over and over like braille. Then he whispered into the silence, "I choose you, Nia." And with that he stood, wiped his tears, and grabbed the painting. Across town, Nia sat on the worn couch in her cousin's one-bedroom apartment. She clutched a notebook to her chest, its pages full of half-finished poems she couldn't bring herself to complete. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw him, his voice trembling as he asked her not to lie. "I hurt him," she whispered. "I broke him worse than the blindness ever did." Her cousin Jada walked in from the kitchen. "Then go fix it," she said simply. "They'll never let me in that house again." "Then don't go to the house, go to him." The next morning, Elias sat on a park bench just outside the city, the one place Nia had told him she loved most. The bus route stopped there. He remembered. He had listened. He waited and waited until the sun began to lower and golden light dripped through the trees like melted glass. Then he heard it, a soft gasp, a step, a voice he would know even without ears. Elias. He turned, and though his vision was still faint, her shape, her presence, it glowed like firelight in the dark. I lied to protect you, she said before he could speak. You hurt me, I know, but I still choose you. She blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek. Even after everything? Even after everything, he said, because I'd rather be blind with you than see the whole world without you. She laughed, just once, shaky and beautiful, and ran to him. He dropped the painting, arms open, and they collapsed into each other like they were made to be whole again. 6 months later, the sun kissed the ocean like it had waited 1,000 years just for this moment. Waves rolled in slow, warm and endless. Laughter danced on the breeze. School kids building castles, seagulls overhead, salt air thick with joy and memory. Elias stood barefoot on the shore, his cane beside him in the sand. He wore no sunglasses today. He didn't need them anymore. Describe it to me again, he said, smiling softly. Naya stood beside him, her sundress fluttering in the breeze. The ocean, he nodded. It's still loud, she said with a grin. Still smells like salt and dreams, and God breathing. She smiled, tears threatening her voice, more than ever. He reached for her hand, found it instantly. Tell me what you see, he said, eyes forward. She looked at him for a long time. I see a boy who used to believe he was broken, she said. And I see a man who learned he wasn't. I see a woman who saved him, he replied, with a touch, and a lie, and love. She chuckled, eyes misting. It wasn't a lie, she whispered. It was just fear wearing a disguise. They sat together on the sand, and Elias pulled out a canvas, unfinished, edges frayed from travel, the same painting, home. But now he added something, a second silhouette, side by side with the first, holding hands, facing the light. They think miracles are big, loud things, he said softly, but mine came wrapped in an apron, with cocoa butter on her hands. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and for a while they didn't speak, because sometimes when love finally arrives, it doesn't need grand declarations, just presence and peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elias turned to her. You know what I see now. What? Everything. And this time, he meant it. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, share your thought, tell us where you are watching from, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share.